Hi, good evening and welcome to the City of Sunbury Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is February 26th at 6:30 p.m. Would you please join me in a moment of silent prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance? Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Roll call, please. Mayor St. John? Here. Mr. Gokenhour?
Here.
Mrs. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Grumney?
Here.
Mrs. Crawford?
Here.
Mr. Stotterman?
Here.
Six present, we have a quorum. Great. We have a review of rules and regulations and amendment. Somebody want to highlight what the amendment to the rules and regulations are?
I can do that, Mr. Mayor. If you recall, the commission approved the rules for 2024 at the January meeting. At that meeting, there was some discussion that prompted by the mayor regarding this ongoing issue we have of having a quorum present at any given meeting when action is taken, and then at the subsequent meeting, having a quorum, but that it does not consist of the members that were at the previous meeting. So there's been concern historically amongst the commission members as to whether they can approve the minutes at a meeting that they're at if they were not at the meeting where the action was taken. So this prompted me to do some research actually on this issue since last month's meeting, and there is nothing in Robert's Rules of Order or the law that would require any commission member to abstain or to not vote on a meeting that they're at to approve the prior meeting's minutes or any meetings minutes prior. So there's no requirement that you have to be at the meeting where the action was taken to approve the minutes for that meeting. So if you're here tonight or at any meeting, you're a part of the quorum, you can take action no differently than any of your other commission members. Additionally, you can offer corrections if you want. And I think that might have happened actually with Ms. Crawford last meeting with something that she noted that corrections. So if you weren't at the meeting and you feel something's incorrect, you can offer a correction to the meeting minutes and then vote on that. The amendment addresses this issue, and really what I just advised you should take care generally of that issue, because really if you're not voting to an abstention or to abstain or not vote, and if that's really just limited to times when you may have an interest in the subject matter that's being handled at the action point, for example, some type of interest in the property that's being rezoned, et cetera, obviously that would be an instance where an abstention would be appropriate. But so really what I just said should take care of most instances, but just so that we don't have this problem reoccur in the future, what the language of this amendment does essentially says is if you are, and this is only with respect to approving meeting minutes, a non-vote or a vote to abstain will be recorded as an abstention, as a non-vote, but it will be counted as an affirmative vote of approval, so that if we do have 4 people and for whatever reason there's an abstention, we still get the meeting minutes approved and they're not being kicked down the road indefinitely, as we have had that happen in the past historically. So with that said, any questions about anything of that for me? That's what the amendment is, and that's why we're asking the commission to vote to approve and revise and with that language to hopefully help us out of that situation moving forward.
Great. Thank you for the explanation.
Yep.
Any questions or discussion? All right, looking for a motion to approve the amended rules and regulations.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Gokenhour,
Second.
second by Councilman Grumney. Discussion? Roll call. Mr. Gokenhour?
Yes.
Mr. Grumney?
Yes.
Mayor St. John? Yes. Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Crawford? Mr. Stotterman?
Yes.
6 yeas, motion approved. Great. Next, we are on to an informal presentation. Bluestone STP LLC, commercial on Sunbury Meadows and Peacock Drive. The anticipated process is the applicant presentation. If you come up and introduce yourself. It's nice to meet you in person.
Nice to meet you as well. Bruce Zosowski with the Bluestone. Was here virtually the last meeting. We recall I had COVID. I have since recovered. So it's nice to meet everybody in person. Yeah, I thought we would would start tonight. Just a reminder that this is really not an up or down vote. Tonight, we're just here informally to get feedback, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, on our project. I'd like to run through it, I have a small presentation, got some representatives here tonight that I'd like to introduce you to. And then we'll just have a maybe open discussion, Q&A, see where we land. So with that, Alex, yeah, just to familiarize yourself with the location, we're in the northeast corner of State Route 3, Sunbury Meadows Drive. It's the yellow area on that's highlighted on the screen there. Just briefly, before we dive into the project itself, I just wanted to just start with a quick history about Bluestone. We're a small company, it's just me and one other gentleman. We've been doing this for 15 years or so. We've done about 150 mixed use, single tenant commercial developments across the Midwest. We're very familiar with Columbus, very familiar with Sunbury. You can see a map of our recent projects on the screen there. Rick Clays is my partner. He couldn't be here tonight, but I think he's out there listening. So it's just working out. He's been dealing with me the entire project. Okay, just a quick site history. I've prepared a quick summary slide here. There's been a little bit of haziness surrounding the underlying zoning of the property, but this property was identified as a commercial development back in the 2005 timeframe. It was rezoned to a planned commercial development or PCD zoning. And that came with certain development standards, which I have here. We're not going to go into those tonight, but it was zoned PCD. The property sat for many years. I think it changed hands between home builders. At one point it was Dominion. Obviously, Pulte took the project over, got some traction around maybe 2015, 2016, maybe before, and started phasing in the residential development that you see today. It's around that time that the property was pitched to us by Pulte and one of our local brokers. We ended up purchasing the property in 2021, which was a tough time for commercial real estate, as you can imagine, coming out of the pandemic. We didn't see a lot of activity at that time, despite our best efforts. We received an unsolicited offer from another developer in June of 2022. As you may recall, I think he came before this commission and showed you a development plan. We gave him an opportunity to take a look at the site. He wanted to buy the whole thing. He did some preliminary engineering, but ultimately really was unable to put together a viable project, and he wanted another extension, didn't get there with him, and ultimately he was not able to close on the property with us. However, he did receive some initial interest from a few tenants, TLE, Learning Experience, Daycare, and Valley. We took the property back over June-ish of 2023. And we've been working with a civil engineering group called CISO just to get a better understanding of stormwater design, utility layout, earthwork balancing, and some of the other critical engineering pieces to make this a successful project. And we've also been working with CBRE, C.D. Richard Ellis, the brokerage firm, to really get the word out on this property, try to generate some additional interest, attract some good quality tenants. Site characteristics. So I think this is helpful context just to understand how the property is, what it is not. It's 6.7 acres in total. There's about an acre of the site on the northern end that's encumbered by some overhead 80 feet distribution lines. So you subtract that out, you're at 5.7. Once you account for stormwater, setbacks, the roadway network, we're at about 3 acres of buildable space. Positives about the site, we've got significant traffic on State Route 3, as you all know, close to 12,000 vehicles per day and growing. And really, as you're traveling north on State Route 3, this is really the first major intersection north of Westerville. And those are all positives. What we heard, though, from some of the larger tenants or the destination type tenants is that we're not quite there on number of households in a 3 to 5 mile radius that they're looking for. that the day population, day pop is also a little bit lower in. And we don't have direct access to Route 3, which is tipping the scales for some of the tenants that are interested, but aren't making a full commitment to us. So given these characteristics, CBRE and we agree, this location lends itself to neighborhood convenience uses, quick service restaurants, auto-oriented uses, but not major anchors or destination users. And we think that that does dovetail with those PCD conditions, the planned commercial development conditions that I mentioned earlier, which allow for offices, banks, government facilities, and then commercial establishments intended to serve the traveling public, restaurants, and other similar facilities, which is straight from the zoning criteria. And ultimately, I think Sunbury agrees. Part of the PCD zoning text says that Sunbury, this is a quote from your text, recognizing that with increased urbanization and population growth comes increased demand for well-organized commercial areas to provide employment, goods and services to area residents, as well as to provide a balanced economy within the municipality. So, context, history, where are we? Unfortunately, Aldi, they took a pass. I'm not sure if you've heard about Aldi's interest. We knew they were interested in Sunbury. We knew they were interested in our location. We had a lot of phone calls with them. We were pretty flexible with them on pricing, location within our lot, size of the property they needed, and ultimately they did decide to take a pass at the location. We were disappointed. I think that the return model for them internally was on the bubble. And I think without direct access to State Road 3, it tipped the scales for them and they decided to take a pass. Fifth Third Bank, another quality tenant, did express interest initially, passed on the location when Aldi dropped out. And I should say that we are generally agnostic to the uses that are interested in our locations, but we do need good quality tenants to make the project work. And to that point, we are able to announce that we do have commitments from 2 users currently, one of which is Valvoline, and Robin Peck is here from Valvoline. We'll hear from her in a second. The other one is Circle K. And unfortunately, Brett with Circle K, he had a family emergency, texted me before the meeting. He's not here in attendance tonight, but we'll get to a slide specifically about Circle K and get your feedback on that use as well. So in addition to those 2 uses, we have had a lot of interest from Community Bank. Several coffee users have expressed interest. We're excited about that. And we continue to follow up with them on next steps. Okay, so I think you all have this in your packet. This is just a quick rendering of our site, a quick layout. We are showing the Circle K on, we'll call the very western edge of the property, closer to Sunbury Meadows Drive. And interior, we're showing a coffee user with a drive-through, showing Sam with the drive-through, and showing Valvoline to the east or the very northern edge of the property. And I want to stress this is only a conceptual plan. We got some initial feedback about the location of detention. We got some initial feedback about potentially moving the buildings closer to State Route 3. We're looking into that. We're obviously going to need to work with Dan, with Alice, with Daryl on this plan. This is just a conceptual plan. We've got their traffic study. This is a different mix of uses than what was presented by the previous developers. You have to make sure that works. I'd also like to stress that screening and buffering are going to be critically important here to the success of the project. We know we are adjacent to residential. We're going to need feedback from them. First step is to come here and get feedback from you. The next step is to get feedback from them. But we do think that if properly laid out from a circulation perspective, lighting, noise abatement, landscaping, this would be an amenity for the neighborhood and for Sunbury. The plan that you see in front of you is the required landscaping code. We'd like to hear from the planning commission tonight about what you might like to see over and above that and where. And before we dive into the Q&A on site plan, I did think it was appropriate to ask Robin to come up and just introduce yourself quickly in front of Valerie, and then I'll jump back up here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robin Peck from Valley, I'm the reconstruction project manager. We're excited to work with Drew and his team and come to Sunrise. We are a good quality tenant, as he said. Our brand, over 150 years of service. And, you know, we provide a very professional looking building that's up there on the screen, professionally landscaped and maintenance. With the residential behind us that's proposed. Not a lot of noise. In fact, there's no overnight parking. We have no tractor trailer deliveries. And we generate pretty low traffic, perhaps 50 cars a day, versus your coffee shops or quick service that might do 50 cars an hour. So I'm happy to take any questions through the course of the evening, but I'm looking forward to being here and working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Brett with Circle K could be here tonight. He asked me to highlight a couple of bullet points, which I'll do. I have not worked with Circle K specifically in the past. I have worked with other convenience store tenants. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the gas use specifically. But he did want to stress that this is a larger store footprint than is typical for them. That's because they have an additional food element inside the building. So they're up from 4,000 square feet to 5,200 at this location. That's what they would propose. This would be a corporately owned unit and operated. It's a smaller gas canopy, only 5 pumps compared to you've seen the larger format units with 8, 10, 12, very similar to what UDF has. They intend to work with the city on the elevation, both the canopy and the building. And he really wanted me to stress that they know how to work with neighbors. They have many locations that are directly adjacent to residential, and that they're excited about the opportunity. They're excited about this market and the potential here. So those are kind of remarks from Brett. Alex wanted to play the next one, maybe one more. Just had one other piece I wanted to mention, and we'll jump back to the plan and have an open discussion. Just from a land use perspective, you can see on your screen, I've circled our property in red. See, it's shaded purple. I've also highlighted 2 other developments within the city. The Kroger development, sort of southwest corner there at Route 3, and then the Wendy's Auto Zone in the northwest corner. Just to show you the adjacencies with those 2 commercial developments, you can see the purples and pink, which is a similar situation to our site, which is the purple, so the pink or commercial to the single family residential. This is the buffer behind Kroger on Miller Drive. You can see they burned it up quite a bit. They've got some mature trees at this point, but wanted to have an open discussion about what you see here, what you've heard from residents about the adjacency from these other commercial developments, what they're happy with, what they're not happy with, and potentially what we can implement and exceed in our location. Skip down, back to that. Yeah, so at this point, just back to the conceptual plan, happy to answer questions. I know that was a lot of information, hopefully not too much rambling, but that's where we are. We know this is an important location, you know, it's an important project for the city, so we want to get it right. And this is not a fully baked project as we sit here today, but we're at the point where we want to see some activity here. We've got some momentum, we've got some real tenant interest, and we'd love to hear your feedback and hopefully some enthusiastic feedback about where we are and where we can be.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, we'll open it up to the commission for comments and questions.
If I could, thank you. If I could just start with one question, just for my own understanding, I'm trying to put in my head why, I understand access of Route 3, it's just quicker access into a commercial development, but like I'm thinking about Kroger, and if I'm not wrong, I mean, that's not direct access off of Route 3, you're going back. So I guess I don't understand why, I'm just asking for your experience. Why are commercial builders so hung up on the direct access when it's just a right or left turn and then into the parking lot?
From my perspective, I'm with you.
Okay,
This is traditional shopping center access.
Yeah.
Access off of a side road like this.
right.
There's been some new kind of shakeups, I guess I'll say, in some development departments where folks feel like they need to have that direct access.
Mhm.
I don't agree. I think this is very traditional access.
Yeah.
I'm not the decision maker, unfortunately. The CBRE agrees with me.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that seemed to tip the scales for Always specifically. But you can go look at a number of their units and the access is very similar to what we're showing on the screen. So
Okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something very obvious where it's like, well, of course, you dummy, so, okay.
I'm with you.
Okay, all right. And then the only thing, since I'm talking, I'll just have, and you kind of brought them up and I'll just concur. I do like the idea of putting them closer to Route 3 than closer to the developments. I like that idea because I think you start to worry a little bit about light pollution too, for those houses. And then I think, as much as you can do as far as buffer on the backside there between the development and the better. So, whether it's elevation or, trees or shrubs or whatever it is, because I think people living in those houses, I think that would be convenient, nice to have that there. I think they've known moving in there, that's commercial and eventually something's gonna come in. But if we can do what we can to make sure that it doesn't feel like they're right next to a parking lot, that would be great.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. I was out there today and drove around. There's no screening on the residential side today.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be.
Yeah.
In addition to the screening that we're gonna have on our side. So, just go ahead and offer that up right off the bat.
Mhm.
The 2 or 4 houses that are closest to Peacock Drive, which is in the back, those are folks' backyards, there's playground back there. I'd love to see a fence on that side in addition to what we have on the commercial side.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. And I'm a user of convenience stores quite a bit. One of the things that I'm concerned about is the turn radius for both the semi trucks and the box trucks.
Sure.
Because of the median on Sunbury Meadows and being able to then turn out to go back out with the median. That concerns me a lot because as my past life, I've dealt with a lot of semi trucks and box trucks
Okay.
running into property, both
Sure.
light poles, street signs, running into ditches and everything. The other thing, one of the others is just the volume. I'm well aware of what kind of volume. It's not very much for like Valvoline. I'm not acquainted with what the volume of the kind of deliveries would be for a convenience store, but I know it would be quite a bit because of all the different brands.
Mhm.
And so I'd be interested in that. The other thing is what kind of hours the Circle K is. Normally, when it's in a very busy area, it might be 24 hours, but I do know when it's closer to residential, like on Sunbury Road down in Westerville, they close like at 11. And so I would be interested in kind of knowing if this is going to be a 24-hour facility, because that kind of does change the flavor of the commercial, because none of the others, while they're are 24-hour.
Yeah, happy to answer your question in order. I think the first one was the truck radius is we're gonna need to prove to Dan and to ODOT that the type of delivery vehicle that comes into the Circle K can navigate the site, can navigate the canopy, and then can make a safe move without jumping the curb, without destroying the landscaping. So that's gonna be part of engineering, kind of one-on-one with Dan. I do want to hit on this because I think it's a good point. Mentioning the median in Sunbury Meadows Drive, the previous developer who came before you, I think there was a comment about the access on Sunbury Meadows being just a right in, right out only versus full access. we are showing it as a full access. We need to work with Dan and we need to complete a traffic study to make sure that that can be done safely. There may need to be a modification to that median within Sunbury Meadows Drive to facilitate those left turns in. So that's all on the table for us to look at regarding truck deliveries, turning radiuses, and that modification to the median. So that's a good point. I didn't want to blaze over that. We can talk about that again as we go through here. Deliveries. In my experience, 2 deliveries a day from the store side. That's my experience. I will write this question down for Brett. Other C-store operators, you know, they've got a delivery in the morning, the Lapari truck, the Coke truck comes in, drops off the food for the day. Your box truck, I would venture to guess with the amount of volume they're doing here on the low end that they would maybe have 1 gas delivery a day. But I'll follow up with Brett on that. So we're talking about 2 to 3 of those types of trucks per day for the Circle K specifically. 24 hours. I think it's a great question. I believe the UDF is 24 hours. I know that's a bit further into the commercial area of Sunbury. I know that Circle K is going to want to be competitive with them, so I know that they're going to try for 24 hours. But I've got that written down. I've also got written down that they've got a similar store within the area that closes at 11. So they're going to need to explain how that's going to operate, and they're going to need to explain how that operates safely if it's going to be 24 hours. But I think I got your questions, but if there's any follow-up on those, happy to answer.
Just wait to hear the answers.
Okay, sure.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Drew, first of all, thank you for going through this. It was very well done. What is typical in the area where you have the power lines, that the 5th zone, I guess, to the right? What typically happens to that? Does that just become green space?
Yeah, green space. We looked at detention over there. It's kind of a logical spot for it because it's underneath the power lines. It's not really a buildable area, but the site kind of is high on that end. It flows towards Sunbury Meadows, and towards State Rock Creek. So Holtby left some dirt there. If you go by there, you'll see it. It's mounded up a bit, 5-6 feet. I think we could enhance that. You can see we've got some additional buffering along the kind of the northern property line, but long story short, green space.
Okay.
Is what we're thinking.
I asked that to ask this. You've got the sidewalk along State Route 3 on the front of the properties that I call that the sidewalk to nowhere, the one going to the right there,
Yeah.
where it kind of dead ends. Is it possible that that sidewalk could come through the green space and readjoin the back part of the lot where there's a sidewalk around? Right now, there's a sidewalk along the bottom, but there's no sidewalk pedestrian access into the properties that I can see other than walking through with the traffic. Whereas from the front side of the property where I don't know that anybody's going to come from that direction, you can walk right up, and on the bottom side, you're going to be walking with the cars. Unless I guess you walk all the way around, maybe to the, I don't know, I can see the Circle K kind of has a walk up sidewalk, but maybe sidewalk access for the benefit of the homeowners wanting to go and use those properties without having to walk
For sure.
on blacktop.
Yeah, I think we've got some room for improvement.
Okay.
Sidewalk locations here. As for connecting it on kind of the west side or north side of the Valvoline, we're open to that. That's
Okay.
something you'd like to see.
And the last thing that I noticed about this is the first 2 properties, the Circle K, and I think the second one you have kind of currently labeled there as a restaurant or a coffee place.
Yeah.
There's that area that kind of adjoins those. I call that the cut through, where the people who want to get ahead of line jump through there. Is there a reason that that's like that versus the rear access where you would have to get to the other properties? Why is there a cut through there? Because that becomes high-speed traffic zipping through. They're not going to the Circle K, they're going to the coffee shop, and then they're using that as that same thing happens out here at the 71. There's a coffee place out there where people are always trying to get their coffee fast.
Definitely see your point. I think from an engineering perspective, it was just to maximize the amount of queue that we have there with the wraparound, but I think we could redirect that to be off of the internal access road if you thought that was more appropriate. I think the stacking would be about the same if we just kind of flip this from here to here. Is that what you're getting at? That folks are going to come straight in through here?
Sure.
Yeah. So maybe we punch this through on this side and have traffic divert that way. I think we can certainly work on that, or we do something with this being offset from this actual drive, maybe move this up slightly so that there's an offset and it's not a direct route.
Right.
So I agree with you.
With so many entrances and exits, it does seem like there's a lot of options for people to get where they gotta go, and there's gonna be, you know, 3 alternatives to get to the destination that, you know, you're gonna have a lot of two-way traffic that are, maybe not, taking their time.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Might have had another one. Somebody else go ahead. Got through most of my notes.
John, you took my questions. And any other questions I have are more specific to the buffering, the landscaping. Is there any progress on that, or is it too early to even begin that step?
Well, what you see on the screen is us working with the engineer and their review of the Sunbury code as far as what's required by code. But I think what we need to do in a situation like this where we're directly adjacent to residential is go above and beyond that. So I'm open to what we saw behind the Kroger development on Miller, where we burn up and then we put screening or hedgerow on top of that. We're open to a fence on top of that. It's really kind of up to the commission. I think it's also up to the folks who are going to be living next to this and get their feedback as well. So what you see on the screen again is what's required by code, it's kind of the minimum, but we want to go beyond that and we're open to ideas on how to do that. And we could present some concepts too and some renderings of what that might look like to start the discussion. How do we do that?
Jason, did you have another question?
I'm still learning the ordinance regarding, and I know you kind of already mentioned that there's a possibility, or I guess, of 24-hour lighting. I know when I'm out of gas, the first thing I do is look for the bright lights because that's what a gas station is, right? And you're right, there's a lot of homes right there. I think I read in the ordinance that it's what was the word it used? It's what was it?
Cut off?
No, it was a term used that was kind of very vague and generic about the amount of light that was reasonable for an establishment like that. And it was so vague that to be like, well, that could mean anything.
They have to do a light study. I mean, as they
There it is.
progress, yeah, it's a photocell analysis. I can't remember the photometrics, yeah.
Yeah, let's speak to that just quickly. The planned commercial development standards that were enacted in 2005 timeframe. They do discuss lighting. They say that parking lot lighting must be from full cutoff fixtures and no more than 18 feet in height. So cutoff just means that there's a rating for each of these lights where there's backlight, uplight, glare, and the types of lights that we're going to be using are LED lights, and they are full cutoff. So we're going to need to prove to the dam and the city that we're at 0 foot candles at the property line, and that we're not glaring into folks' homes who are 200 or 300 feet away. So that's going to be critical as well.
Excellent.
Joe, do you have anything?
Two things. I think the thing that most concerns me is the full access to Sunbury Meadows. It seems like it's gonna be quite busy with not something there, whether that's stop signs, stoplight, pork chop. And then my only other question, Jason kind of got on it a little bit, but the 1 acre of unusable space underneath the AEP lines, is there any way we can make it usable in some sort, whether that be recreational or? I like the idea of the sidewalk coming up through there. That's a good idea, but
Yeah. Well,
versus just being a bunch of green space that has to be maintained.
yeah, let me answer that question first, and then I'll access. But these same standards do discuss a common open space area that is ultimately given back to the homeowners association for the homes behind. Maybe we could work something out where if that's truly unusable area, it's just green space. Let's work on something with the city or the homeowners association for part of that space. Either back to them or be an easement or whatnot, because I agree, it shouldn't just sit there and throw grass, obviously we maintain, but if there's a better higher use for it, we're open with that. Regarding access, I do think access is going to be a critical component to this. Obviously, the folks at Circle K, they want to be convenient. If we have that access on Sunbury Meadows here, if this becomes right in, right out versus full, the traffic's going to come back onto Peacock. And all the traffic that's trying to get in is gonna be forced to come in through this entrance and this entrance to the various businesses. I would prefer, that we try to bring traffic in safely at Sunbury Meadows and avoid them having to come in through Peacock being an alternate drive for these businesses, but you gotta look at stacking. We have to look at the timing of the light at Sunbury and Route 3. And we have to prove that those left turns are not gonna be stacking back into the intersection and causing an issue, so. That's on us to work with Carpenter Marty, the transportation folks, and with Dan and with ODOT, are gonna wanna see the traffic study. To see if we can make that work, and if we can't make that work, then, you know, those will be the consequences, and it'll have to be right in, right out, but if we can work safely, I'd prefer to see the traffic come in right off of Sunbury Meadows and stay away from Peacock, just my personal.
I guess in perspective, that distance is probably about the same or possibly greater than the distance from Route 3 to Tim Hortons, if you think about it. So, and there doesn't appear to be any type of stacking issues there.
Well, we gotta look at it.
Yeah.
And that'll be, you know, ultimately, we put go count the traffic out there today, existing conditions, we add the traffic generation from each of these uses. We come up with a traffic study, there's gonna be recommendations in there about what's required. The right in, right out, it may have to be a right in, right out, we're gonna see if full is okay, see if the stacking works, see if the level of service of that signal is diminished, and if it's not, I think we can make full access work. If it doesn't, then, you know, we'll come back to you with a plan that, you know, matches the recommendations of that traffic study.
Appreciate it. I did want to say thank you for your transparency. I mean, we were getting kind of the inner workings of your marketing here and yeah, I mean, it was a really unique lens, you know, the history of it, you know, where you fell out of contract and why. We don't get that all the time, so I very much appreciate that.
Yeah.
I also want to say it means a lot that you're bringing in your users. That's also not typical. But we do appreciate it. It's nice to put a face with a company. It shows a lot about the cooperation and the agreement that you have. I also wanted to ask a question because you were offering things and if this becomes a negotiation, I'd like to understand why you're offering them. And my question is, what variances are you asking for? Because typically if a developer is meeting the code, you know, they aren't willing to go above and beyond. Are you just a good guy or what are you asking?
Well, I'd like to think so, but I'm sure that during the process with Dan, we're gonna need something. We're gonna need a setback variance, we're gonna need
Parking space?
parking space variance, whatever it may be. And done enough of these to know that there's gonna be some pushback from the neighborhood on commercial uses. And so I just want to come out and say, these are the things that we can negotiate on. I understand that some folks may just not like the uses because they don't like them. I also understand that argument, but if we can offer something over and above code, those are the things that we can actually do to enhance this being an amenity and not just, you know, us flying into town and trying to get this project done. So that's why I'm offering it. I think we're gonna get there eventually, so why not start somewhere close to that and negotiate from there?
Really appreciate that. I guess I think I would echo what many of these our commissioners have said here today, and that is, you know, buffering, mounding. There's different ways to do it. I mean, abate the noise to you know, it's going to help your photo cell analysis or photometric analysis if you've got mounding and landscaping and things like that. The one thing I didn't hear from the commission is around building materials, and that's where I would. I mean, this is a strong entrance feature to not only this neighborhood, but the city, and with it being, you know, the first major intersection north of Westerville. I think we'll want to see strong materials. And, you know, when I'm talking about strong materials, I'm talking like brick, primarily. I saw some of the renderings had some brick, but probably not enough in my opinion. We do want these to be deep rooted companies, and that investment in the materials shows that investment.
No, I agree, and I think maybe just a question back to the commission, and maybe for Dan or for Alex or Daryl, but just the process from my perspective after receiving feedback from this group. Like to make some contacts to the neighborhood, if we get through this meeting, but also just to talk about next steps with, we're gonna start somewhere with an elevation with the tents that we have, we're gonna submit those, I'm sure there's gonna be a back and forth. Does that occur with commission, does that occur at staff level? How do we get from, our initial submittal to something that y'all are happy with before we just come back with something and then, maybe you're looking for something different?
I would definitely run it through staff first. I think the process that you've been going through is the right way to do it. These guys know generally what the commission is looking for, and I mean, we hit on all of them that I can think of. Access, traffic, safety, buffering, both for noise, sound, appearance, materials. Is there anything I'm missing, commission? So I think we're just asking staff to have our back on that, like you always do, and then get it to a point that it's ready to bring back to the commission. That sound good?
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
One thing I would say, this is a personal preference of mine. I'll be pushing for an amendment to our code at one point, but our parking requirements are way outdated.
Okay.
And, when we have this impervious surface, number one, it just makes it harder to manage the site from a stormwater calculation perspective. I think it eats up valuable real estate, and these aren't Black Friday businesses. We shouldn't be calculating parking counts based on Black Friday anyways, like they used to do. So I would say, I don't know that I'm saying smaller spaces, but what I am saying is probably less amount versus code. And if anybody has an argument the other way,
I'd rather see less spaces than smaller spaces.
I agree. Well, I'm with you on that.
And don't
Some
mess
places you don't
with,
anymore, it's like you can't even hardly open your door and you're parked in the dead middle.
Right.
and don't mess with handicap spaces.
Totally agree with that.
Sure. We'll get our hands slapped if we do that. So.
So if you're running out of space and this is like per code based on square footage and that calculation, I would say we probably have wiggle room on there.
That was good to know, because I think we're a little light on coffee user, as far as spaces that are kind of within that box. I mean, we can put parking, along a buffer here or get creative, but I agree, if it's not gonna get used, and we can maybe show that some of these tenants have done a parking study
Right.
and they really need 20, not 30, or whatever it happens to be, we can present that as part of our application.
3 businesses I would just reference, and this isn't their fault. We enforce this, but Sherwin-Williams, Dairy Queen, Chase Bank,
Yeah,
I've never seen any one of their
Yeah.
parking lots full, and probably could have done a better job utilizing space, planting trees, whatever. So,
it's actually a problem for some of these tenants, because optically it looks like it's closed.
right.
There's 2 or 3 people there, but there's a sea of spaces. What's going on there? Why is there no activity there? So I'm glad to hear, you're in the minority saying, a little bit less parking, but that trend's there.
I would just ask, as frequent users of the convenience stores,
Yeah.
they are very popular for coffee, so that might be redundant to have both the Circle K and the coffee right beside each other.
Sure.
I can tell you just not today, I wasn't in a Circle K, but I've been in a lot the last week and a half. And the numbers in the Quick Trip, and the Buc-ee's and all of those, they're in there for the coffee and the drinks. And having a coffee store next door might not be the best.
Sunbury would make you a cape with an S on it if you brought a Chick-fil-A in that spot.
Yeah.
That's true.
Let's,
Or roosters.
Yeah.
noted.
That's good feedback. Anything else?
There was a comment made, I think when you were online last time, regarding consolidation of some of the stormwater ponds. Is there a game plan to one pond, or is there been any movement on that? I bring that up because I know in this community, there's an enormous Canadian geese problem, and they love those ponds.
Yeah.
And there's thousands of them, and they're going to be in traffic's way. So I don't know if there's a way to create a pond in space where it's away from the traffic so that the geese can have their fun, but not get squashed. They're going to get squashed with that many ponds where they're shown right now.
That's good.
And they're messy too, so.
I think there's a little bit of flexibility with this, I'll call it the northernmost or easternmost pond on the Albion lot. if that could expand a little bit and some of the other ponds that are on the Coffee and certain Paylok could get a little bit smaller, but I do think we're gonna need that amount as far as total volume. How we split it up? You know, because the site does kind of flow downhill from north to south, we can't dig all of our attention here. I'd love to do that. Just we're out of balance with our work if we do that. I think we're gonna need to get a little bit creative, maybe with Dan on how we structure it, but what you're seeing on the screen is generally the volume that we need. But I think we do have flexibility in exactly how it's laid out. I'm not sure if that's gonna solve the reduce problem though.
Well, I've seen, not locally, but in Cincinnati, I saw some creative fencing that was done around ponds that kind of keeps, makes it into kind of a corral almost, so they can get in there and they can be wandering around, but they're tall enough that they can't get under some of the fence rails if it's completely encapsulated. So just kind of an active goose management fence, just to steer them where you want them to go, which is not into pavement.
Okay.
Not in the sidewalks, I guess, is what I care about.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Appreciate your time.
All right, we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, next we have an informal presentation from the New Albany Company Limited Industrial District. Anticipated process, applicant presentation. We have Mr. Brian Stone here. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Like we have said, my name is Brian Stone. I'm managing principal of Reno Development out of Columbus. I'm here on behalf of myself, Reno Development, and the New Albany Company, who are working with the association on this project. Our goal, not only with the site, but also with the city of Sunbury in general, is really twofold. First and foremost, we are hoping to rezone the 708 acres that I believe map was provided to building materials into the city's 85.15.14 light industrial code. And we're doing that really for two reasons. First, it's to attract technology-oriented advanced manufacturing users and infrastructure users into the city. And then also to create a master plan development that will provide for comprehensive design standards that will help not only attract but protect private investment into the city. Tonight's conversation is really a collaboration or a culmination of more than a year's worth of work on behalf of the development team in collaboration with the mayor, city administrator, and city staff. I'm really excited to be here to answer any questions that you might have. Not only during tonight's meeting, but in future meetings. Our goal will be to submit a formal application to this body before your March meeting. But I wanted to make myself available to answer any questions you may have about the proposed rezoning and hopefully for the city of Sunbury.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stone. Do we have any, were there images that we're supposed to reference?
Yeah, well, the image that you see on the screen are really an example of what I mean by a comprehensive design standard. It really comes down to a whole host of things, but primarily it's a common landscaping plan that provides for common streetscape standards and including landscaping and pedestrian access buffering along major roads and surrounding uses. It also is consistent foresight architecture, meeting an architectural standard. And like I said, these are some examples of buildings that are that we've worked on and have had success with in the past. And then uniform street signage, which really not only helps unify the area, but also provides a pleasing drive experience for the surrounding residents.
Great, thank you. All right, and you're planning on submitting for the limited industrial district, correct?
That's correct.
All right, great. And the one thing I wanted staff to maybe help with on this, this is not a planned district. This is a straight zoning district. This code was formed last year, unanimously approved by Planning and Zoning Commission, unanimously approved by City Council. This is the first development that is planning to come in as this zoning. Can we maybe just talk a little bit about the difference in approval process? In other words, what we may see may not be fully baked as we're considering it, yet they need to meet the standards of the zoning district. Mr. Hennessy, or this is new and I'd like your help. Thank you.
Well, you've done a nice job of beginning the introduction. Let me just say this, that what we approved as what we recommended through the Planning Commission, what was approved through council is what you would consider a conventional zoning district. Again, different than the planned development districts that you've seen in the past. And the primary difference is that the standards that you would expect of every development are embedded in the zoning code itself, so that you're not sort of individually developing each site as it comes along. So one important point is that when they come to seek, or anybody comes to seek the zoning designation of limited industrial, as long as they meet the requirements that are in the zoning code, actually they're entitled to the development. That said, we have included a component in the system, though, that basically they do need to bring a site plan in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So while the Planning and Zoning Commission will recommend action on the zoning itself, council will still ultimately approve the zoning itself. But once that zoning is in place, again, they've got the entitlement associated with that and the uses associated with that. What we've though added as an additional element here in the city of Sunbury is that they still have to come to you, show you the plan, and it's primarily an administrative process at that point, assuming that they've checked all the boxes. You're just confirming that they're checking the boxes, essentially. There wouldn't really be a lot of back and forth on the site plan. There may be some opportunities to make some suggestions, and I think the applicant in this particular case would probably accept those. But that makes it a little bit different than the current process. The other thing I'll say is that any rezoning still works the same way, that there's still a public hearing at the Planning Commission level. There's still a public hearing at the council level as well. So we'll go through that process with proper notice to neighboring property owners at both levels.
Thank you very much. All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Stone? Just for reference, the zoning code, the permitted uses, and down to design standards, what's prohibited, what's allowed, was provided in your packet. Any questions? Any comments, questions?
One quick question.
Yep.
Looking at the 700-acre site, up in the top northwest corner, you got that little finger that points out. It cuts across Joe Walker Road, which is the only access to those homes between the two fingers pointing to the west. Joe Walker Road wouldn't be affected by their access to their homes, correct?
Correct. Yes, correct. Yeah, as part of the annexation agreement.
Yes. I was going to say the same thing, that when we originally approved the annexation for this property, there was a discussion with the township folks because they are responsible for that road. Or at least they were responsible for that road. Once it got annexed into the city, we're responsible for the road that abuts to the annexed land. That said, again, we're working with the township to basically come up with some sort of cooperative maintenance agreement long-term, but in no way does it restrict a property owner's access.
Okay.
And we have heard from a couple of the property owners along Joe Walker Road, but mostly just kind of interested in understanding the zoning and what's happening.
Any other comments or questions? All right, Mr. Stone, I believe we'll see you back next month.
You will.
All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to the visitors section. Are there any visitors that would like to speak with the Planning and Zoning Commission? All right. It'll be noted in the record, 25 visitors all declined to participate. Motion to approve the minutes from January 22nd, 2023. Look, I'll make that motion. Second by Mrs. Crawford. Discussion. Roll call.
Mayor St. John,
Yes.
Mrs. Crawford, Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Mr. Gokenhour,
Yes.
Mr. Steineman,
Yes.
Councilman Grumman,
Yes.
6 yeas, motion approved.
All right, we have the zoning report. Mr. Blankenship.
Thank you, Mayor. Joe. Not too much going on this month. We do have, we kind of went back to how we've been going as far as new build construction goes. As you can see, we're at 14. Last year, we were at 15. Kind of keeping up with the trend. Last month, we were at 5. 2023, we were at 6. So kind of just following the same chart as far as that graph goes. We did have our first zoning certificate issued for Eagle Creek, the north portion, so not the southern portion that just went through, but the original plan, they got their first zoning certificate over there, which I believe is for their model home. So they'll be starting that soon. Aside from that, 19 zoning certificates with 14 of them being new builds, egress window. We had a string of solar all going into Rolling Hills. So we've had a lot of solar kind of pick up as we've been going on since I've been here the last year. We've had a lot more solar kind of going in. So it's something that I think we need to think about going forward when we do our zoning, our next zoning ordinance update. We don't really have a strong solar ordinance or any kind of guidelines to that. So just want to put that in your minds as we're starting to see more and more solar come in, and the more that get put on roofs, the more people are going to want them as well. So kind of advertising for themselves, just to keep that in mind.
Are you saying, like, think about standards for it or limitations?
Well, I was thinking more like standards, maybe, because at this point I'm just checking to make sure, like zoning regulation wise, that they're good. But we don't have any kind of permit specifically for solar as well. We don't have any kind of fees or anything associated with solar either. So I just think the last time we did our zoning ordinance, there wasn't necessarily a lot of thought towards solar. So I think even having minimal guidelines would be helpful, at least just so we know what we're checking and making sure everybody's doing it the right way.
You guys maybe could staff maybe make recommendations on that, or maybe see what other municipalities, townships, the county is doing with that?
Got it.
Thank you.
Aside of that, we didn't have no violations to report here. There is a couple different notices I've received phone call wise that I've been following up on, but nothing as of yet that hasn't already been corrected. And then aside from that, total new construction up for this year is at 19. So that is what we're looking at. Any questions, zoning related, new build related?
Any questions for Alex? Thank you very much, sir.
No problem.
Great work. All right, discussion, new business, Mr. Gokenhour,
No.
Mr. Grumman, Mrs. Miller,
When are we gonna decide about the May meeting?
the May meeting.
It's on Memorial Day, is that right?
It's on Memorial Day.
Yes.
Oh, I won't be here anyways. Yeah, that's right. You guys can have it.
Oh, we can, I think typically we pushed it week before. If there is a date that works best for the commission, we could do that. I'll send an email out tomorrow morning, and we can just run through either a doodle post, or we can just start with the week before, which would be, let me see.
Yeah, the only thing there to consider is that's the standing meeting for the Board of Zoning Appeals, so.
Yes.
But they do meet at 5:30, so it's possible we could stack these meetings without it necessarily being an issue.
That would be May 20th.
Yes, that would be that day. So we could tentatively schedule for May 20th instead of the 27th. And then worst case scenario, if we have a Board of Zoning Appeals, if I think it'll be a longer meeting, we can always put a backup date in. If we wanted to do it Tuesday instead, we could always do that.
I'm out that entire week.
Which week?
I'm gone from the 11th through the 26th.
Is anybody else going to be gone? Because then we wouldn't have quorum, so we should pick a
We're just
different.
gonna call Mrs. Miller back to active duty.
I can take the camera out on the beach, that's all right.
I just forgot. I'm actually out the 20th, actually. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm out the 18th through the 26th.
All right.
And I'm sorry.
So as long as you're sorry, then.
On the 10th.
What about,
Well, that still doesn't change the fact that we'll still, you know, if the other four are still going to be present, I mean, that gets us where we need to be. So is the 20th as a tentative date, a good date
Pencil in for
for the
20th.
fourth, four of you? Yeah.
It's too far away for me to know.
Well, we did say a tentative date, so there's an opportunity it could move.
tentative worst case, we can move to the Tuesday after, and that way we'll have everybody back the 28th. So 20th for now, scheduling backup date being the 28th, the Tuesday. Or,
Yep. Tentatively penciled in the 20th. Or 28th, excuse me.
Which,
What's that?
which?
that's on the 20th.
20th.
And
Okay.
yes, if you are busy on the 20th, then we'll move to the 20th. Or anybody else who's here is busy on the 20th, just to make sure we have four.
Service. Anything else, Mrs. Miller?
Nope.
Mr. Crawford?
No.
Mr. Stoddard?
No.
All right. I have no new business either. Next meeting, March 25th, 2024. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion by Mr. Rumney,
Second.
second by Mr. Okenauer. Discussion. Roll call. Councilman Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Okenauer,
Yes.
Mayor St. John. Yes. Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Crawford,
Yes.
Mr. Stoddard.
Yes.
6 yeses, meeting adjourned. All right.